And I've got to turn the switch on the back. Ah! In this video, I'm going to be taking a look at not just one, but two vintage full-size PCs that I found at eWaste. I'm going to take a look at what's inside and see if they'll power up. And yes, I did get a hernia from lifting them up on the bench here. That's coming up right now on Retro Hack Shack After Hours. All right, well, my head may be out of frame, as is the bottom of these PCs. They are really, really big. If you've never had one of these back in the day, I know I did for a while. You know, people would use them for servers and things like that, but they were big and massive and took up a lot of space. Generally, these would go, you know, on the side of your desk, probably one of those old metal desks like everybody had back in the day, and they would be filled with probably some really powerful latest and greatest technology at the time that they were put out, or maybe they had a lot of drives installed, or you just needed some extra space for something on the inside or in the bays here. Recently, I found both of these at eWaste, and I'll tell you what I paid for them at the end of the video. And I did a video on another full-size tower. In fact, I think it was a two-parter. So if you haven't seen that one, you might want to go back and look at that two-part video on one that I did, I think last year, maybe a year and a half ago. And these things are heavy. I don't know exactly what they weigh, but literally they are difficult for me to get up on the table here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover the fronts and backs of both of these real quick so we can take a quick look before I open one of them up, because I don't want to take one of them down to do one at a time and then have to lift it back up and do that one. So let's take a look at both of these and compare what's in them and try to get an idea for what time frame these full tower PCs were in service. And right away, there are a couple of telltale signs here for which one is older. I'm sure you've already noticed. This one over here has a 5¼ inch drive and a 12-speed CD-ROM. Well, this one, in addition to being less yellowed, actually in almost perfect condition, has only a 3¼ inch floppy drive, and it has a DVD-ROM installed. So this one is going to be quite a bit newer, I think, than this one. This one on the front also has reset and turbo buttons. The turbo button, again, is kind of a dead giveaway that this one's going to be a bit older than this one. We have a 3½ inch floppy drive followed by a 5¼ most likely 1.2 meg drive there. And as I mentioned, a 12-speed CD-ROM, and that's about it. Now this one, on the other hand, has a 3½ inch drive and a power button up at the top here. And interestingly enough, it has these security removable hard drives that I have on a few of the PCs that I found over the years. And they have the locking mechanisms. So if you were to look in here, you would see I don't know if it's a 37 pin or something like that, kind of a Centronics connection in the back. You could just take your hard drive, which would have been in a carrier, and you could insert it, or you could take it out, take it home with you at the end of the day to really protect your data. It does have another DVD-ROM drive up here that I just noticed. So it actually has two DVD-ROMs and two of these removable hard drive caddy things. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the front. It does say HD Systems. I'm not familiar with that brand, but you know, perhaps that was either a local small business or something that set this up. Now, as I'm turning this around and breaking my back, I did just want to point out that this one has some interesting feet on it. Because this thing is so tall, it actually has some little plastic things that swivel out, and I can't get it to pop out because it is broken off. Both of these are broken off, but these are little feet that would have swiveled out and extended beyond the frame here so that it would be a little bit more difficult to tip over. But there's one way down here in the back that is still there, but the other three on here, the plastic has become brittle and they've actually broken off over time. Okay, both of these have power supplies up here in the top section. The one on this side is a bulkier, older style power supply. I can tell just by looking at it. And the one on this side is a newer style power supply, perhaps even an ATX power supply. And I'm guessing that this is probably an AT power supply, a very big AT power supply. Down here, there are at least a couple of interesting things. There's a parallel port, actually it looks like maybe a serial port there, and a sound card. So we'll have to see what kind of sound card this is. a VGA video card, and a modem, and maybe some sort of a fan or something. On this side, this is definitely a more modern motherboard. I can tell based on, the connections here. On the back, we've got PS2, we've even got USB. We've got an interesting video card here. I can see VGA and some sort of special header, maybe for some sort of multi-input device or S-video. It looks like there might even be composite on this video card, so I'm wondering if that might be a video capture card. We've got USB card installed down here, so more USB ports than what's even built into the motherboard, and a sound card. Looks like a newer looking sound card, and also a modem down here on the bottom. All right, I'm trying to make this a quick video, but I can tell it's already going to be a challenge just because it's hard to keep this thing in frame because it's so big. This one has some interesting aesthetics to it. It has like a plastic back to it that I'm hoping will pop off because the screws that I'm going to need to get to take the case off are going to be back here behind this plate. So hopefully, yep, okay, there's one side. Does it just come off easily? Oh, yep, I think it just pops off here. Whoop, yep, there we go. It is off. And sure enough, that also reveals, interestingly, a parallel port and another COM port that weren't even exposed in the plastic back here. They didn't even bother taking those off to get to the serial port and the parallel port that are up here. There's also some old electrical tape around here. That's not a good sign. Might be, I wonder if that's holding on a battery or something. And believe it or not, there's just a single screw here holding this on. So somebody must have been in here probably at some point. But all the other screws have already been removed. All right, let's see if this will slide out. Gonna have to give a little bit of mechanical assistance here. There we go. Wow. Okay, and we get our first look at what is inside of this thing. Well, as expected, we've got this big, bulky, old school power supply, 250 watts, which was probably pretty big for the day. There is not anything else behind this odd looking blanking plate that I thought might be there. So there's nothing that I see in there. Everything else we already reviewed from the front. Let's pop out these cards and see what we've got. Ooh, I already see something, which is a winner chicken dinner. Yep, Sound Blaster 32. There it is. And it even has the extra RAM installed up here. So somebody was proud of this. It looks to be in great shape. Sometimes the capacitors do go out on these though. So we'll have to see if it works in a minute. And the IDE connection on this is interfacing with the CD-ROM, just as you might expect. Okay, next up we have the video card here. This is a Trident card. So not the most sought after card in the world. There it is, the Trident with all the memory populated in this particular version. Not a bad card overall and really reliable, at least in the ones that I've tested. So hopefully this will work as well. Next up, we have this bog standard modem card. Back in the day, every computer like this had to have a modem. And yeah, that last one down on the bottom with those vents, sure enough, was a PC exhaust fan. I used to use these back in the day in my full tower PCs as well, just to get a little bit of extra circulation going through the system. All right, I had to lay the computer down to give you this shot of the motherboard because I want to try it after I test the power supply, of course. I want to try this out and see if it will just boot up as is. Now, whatever hard drive there was in this machine, it has been taken out. I don't see a hard drive anywhere, but just look at this beauty of a motherboard. 4 PCI slots, 5 ISA slots, 8 slots for additional memory, 4 here and 4 here. There's also a cache card installed, and the piece de resistance is a dual CPU system. 2 sockets. There's one in here. I'll try to figure out what that is in a minute. And there's also, unfortunately, a Dallas chip. So we'll have to see if this thing even boots, but hopefully I think it's in a socket. So I could just pull this out and replace it with one of the brand new ones I have. And taking a look at the BIOS down there, it looks like Award Software 1995. So yeah, just as I expected, and a lot of times in these full tower PCs, you get a Mac Daddy system. And in this case, the crown jewel here of this system would have been the dual CPU system here, where you can actually have two CPUs running. If you're interested, this is a tie-in motherboard. Tie-in, I believe, was a pretty good third-party brand back in the day. I remember using some tie-in boards myself, but yeah, I'm going to have to do a little bit of research on this board and look it up and see if we can get this thing up and running. Wouldn't that be cool to have a dual processor system? Oh man. Leave your suggestions down in the comments below what you would do with one of these beautiful dual CPU systems. Let me know. I'd be really interested in hearing about it. And if I like one of your ideas, maybe I will go ahead and do that on the channel. Okay, well, first thing I always like to do in this situation is test the power supply and test the motherboard for shorts. Now, when I plug this thing in, the power switch was already in the on position, so it's actually powered up right now, even though it's not plugged into the motherboard. It is plugged into the floppy drives and the CD-ROM here, so plenty of load on this thing to get it started because the fan's working, and it's actually a really quiet fan. So that's nice, but let's see if we're actually getting correct voltages on this. So let's go ahead and test the 5-volt lines first. Yep, 5.084, nice, right on the money. Then we can take a look at the 12-volt. 11.2, so that's a little bit low, but not terribly low. I think it's probably fine. Negative 11.7, and then this should be another 5 volt over here, and power good should also be 5 volts, and it is. So all of the voltages, at least on the power supply, look good. So let's go ahead and test the board for shorts. Yeah, no shorts on this thing whatsoever, so that's a good sign. All right, now that we know the power's good, I've got the monitor hooked up. I got the VGA card reinserted in here, and I've got run-of-the-mill AT keyboard connected because of that black tape. I thought it might be holding something up inside the case, but it's evident now that that black tape was used to kind of block off the keyboard connector, a homegrown, by the way. They actually just cut a piece of the metal out of the case where the AT keyboard would go. And I'm worried about why they put that black tape there. If I were to do that, it would be as a cautionary measure to say, hey, there's something wrong with the keyboard connector or the keyboard chip on the board, so don't connect the keyboard here. So I'm a little bit worried that the keyboard might not work, but it could be that they just blocked off that hole because they weren't using a keyboard. Maybe this was running, a Linux system or something like that. So it could be that they just didn't want people plugging in a keyboard. I don't know, but the fact that that black tape is there is having me, getting me a little bit worried that the keyboard's not going to work, and then I'm going to have to maybe replace the keyboard chip on here. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go ahead and power it on and see if we get any life out of this system. Okay, there's a green light on the motherboard. Oh, I got a beep. That's good. Here we go. Tomcat. Tie-in Tomcat version 3.02 is what this is. It's counting up the memory. Ooh. Okay, 65 megs, I think, of RAM. That's not too shabby. The question is, will this keyboard work? Hit delete to enter setup. Yeah, it works fine. So I don't know why that tape was there. I was sure that this thing was not going to work, but keyboard seems to be working fine, and so far the system seems to be working fine. Now, surely I thought I saw a CMOS checksum thing, so yeah, I don't think this remembers any of the settings on it, so it's gone to default, but yeah, pretty cool. January 1st, 1996. This board, by the way, has a 1995 date on it, so probably you could have run Windows 95 on this, although there are some interesting things about this board. For example, it does have a PS2 connector, so you could hook up for a mouse, so you could hook up a PS2 mouse. It also does have USB. In 1995, that would have been a rarity. Now, the board says 1995. It could have come out later. Maybe this was a later revision of this board. Obviously, the date in the CMOS, the default date, it looks like is 1996. So the BIOS, at least, the software on the BIOS is at least programmed to 1996. So that didn't come out till later. But yeah, having a USB port would have been something that was brand new. It's on a header, so it's not something that's automatically populated, but yeah, you could run USB. It wasn't easy. It didn't always work on Windows 95, but you could actually run that. So I cannot believe this thing is working. Again, let me know down below what I should do. Should I max this thing out and go crazy and see what kind of performance I can get out of this thing? I do want to see if the Dallas chip is still working. So let's just change the date to, just do 2099. That'll be easy to recognize. And then let's save it, reboot it, and maybe even power it off in between. Actually, that would even be better. Okay, I left the computer off for a little bit. Nope, that Dallas chip is bad. It's going back to 1996. So that Dallas chip will definitely have to be replaced. And if I didn't mention it before, this is a Pentium S CPU at 125 megahertz, so not bad at all. Here's a brand new Dallas chip. Notice the date code down here in the corner, 2023. So yes, they are still making these, and you can still buy them brand new and replace those old Dallas chips. Or you can do what I've shown on my channel before, which is just to hook up an external battery. I may save the old Dallas chip just in case I get into a pinch where I don't have any of these new ones. And I can always do that trick on those old Dallas chips. Or you can also buy the replacement chips from Necroware and other places. So lots of good options these days for addressing these dead Dallas chips. And here's the old Dallas chip. You can see right down here, date code of 1996. So no wonder it's dead. All right, got the new Dallas chip in here. So let's go ahead and set the time and see if it remembers it. There we go. 2099 it is. And the other thing I want to do is set I got drive A already set as 1.44, but I want to set drive B as that 1.2. And that should be good for now. So let's see if it remembers this date. Start it back up. Let's see what the date says. 2099. New Dallas chip. Did the trick. Excellent. All right. Well, I went ahead and booted this thing up, and the built-in floppy drive, the 3.5-inch floppy drive, was not working even after I cleaned it. Looks like it's going to need some sort of maintenance. And so I hooked up a known good working floppy drive. So let's go ahead and turn this on and see if this one's working. And yep, I can see it's reading the drive, starting MS-DOS, and there we go. This is Phil's startup disk. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it has all kinds of different combinations of extended and expanded memory, mouse, and CD-ROM, and I've even loaded a generic Sound Blaster driver on here to kind of get those things going. Go check out Phil's hardware and download it and use it. I use it all the time. So let's go ahead and see if we can get into DOS with this, and then we can test the B drive. I've also gone ahead and reinstalled the sound card and hooked up the CD-ROM. This is going to also load a CD-ROM driver here. So we should be able to at least see if the driver sees the CD-ROM drive. Looks like it is, because it did. So it's found the CD-ROM drive, so that's awesome. And it assigned it drive C because there's no hard drive. Okay, now it's installing mouse driver. There is no mouse hooked up, so it didn't find that. Went ahead and loaded the Sound Blaster. Yeah, it's Creative Sound Blaster 32, plug and play. Awesome. Awesome. I'm going to take a picture of this. This should be the defaults, but I want to try this sound card in just a bit to see if it's working. And I want to make sure I remember what it's configured that at. Okay, now as you might see, I've also installed on the IDE part, instead of installing a regular hard drive or a CF to IDE adapter, I went ahead and just put this zip drive on here because it has some software utilities I want. And I know that this is a good drive that I've tested because it's got a little check mark on it. And I'm selling this and a couple other drives and some floppy drives on my eBay store. So go to my eBay store, which is in the description down below there. And if you want to buy these things, they're there. I think they're reasonably priced. So anytime nowadays that I see these things pop up at eWaste, I'm just grab them, test them. If they test okay, just pop them over on the eBay store for people to buy and get. So, okay, so let's go ahead and see if we can detect the zip drive here. Okay, it's trying to find a drive letter for the drive. It always takes a minute to do this. I would recommend using the 5.4 version of the iOmega guest drivers, though, if you're trying to use one of these IDE internal drives like I am. It seems like there was a later one that I tried. It did not work, but the 5.4 version seems to work. Okay, and it did. It found the drive, assigned it drive letter D, and I heard it spinning up in there. The other thing I want to try real quick is the B drive. So I've got a disk in there. Let's just go ahead and go to B and see if that drive is actually working. Oh, it's clunky, but it came back. Let's see. Oh, clunk, clunk. It's kind of working. This is just a DOS 6.22 startup disk, or it's not even a startup disk. It's just a boot disk on a 1.2 meg disk. So yeah, we could boot off of this drive if we needed to, but I'm listening. Yeah, see, now it's not working. There's a lot of clunking going on in that drive. So that drive definitely needs some reconditioning. Oh, now it found it again. So yeah, something to work on later. And of course, just real quick, just to test the sound, I've got some speakers hooked up. Let's just run Doom real quick and see what happens. I'm sure the game will run fine, but really I'm just looking to get some sound out of this sound card. Yeah, I can hear it. Hang on, let me turn this up. There you go. So hopefully you can hear the sound effects in the background there. Doom is set up and it's working just fine, and I'm getting sound out of the speaker, so I think this is a really good system. It's not perfect. I have to address those 2 floppy drives at least, and there's room for another processor and way more memory. So like I said, let me know down in the comments below what I should do with this full tower, a dual CPU system that, I don't know, could be useful for something. Let me know what you think. And by the way, it may be hard to hear the music, but the music was definitely playing in the background in between the scenes. So the music is working and the sound effect seems to be working just fine. Now, before we get to the explosive second half of today's video, I wanted to just take a minute and thank the sponsor of today's video, PCBWay. PCBWay offers inexpensive PCB manufacturing and a whole lot more. Need assembly services? No problem. They can do front side, back side, through-hole components, you name it. They also offer 3D printing, CNC milling, and more. So check out PCBWay for your next project, and I thank them for their support of the Retro Hack Shack. All right, well, here we are with the newer system, and yeah, things are as we expected from what we could see in the front, except for the floppy. For some reason, the floppy drive here is disconnected and just kind of flapping around in the breeze. But yeah, here's the removable hard drive chassis, and they do have a little fan on them I'm seeing back here, so that would help cool off the drive as it sits in this hard plastic case here. Okay, so here's that interesting video card we talked about, and it is some sort of a diamond card from 1999. I can't read that. Maybe I can read it when I go through and do the edit. But yeah, it's got a bit of dust on here. And yeah, the nice thing about this card is it does have VGA out right up here. It has S-Video out and it has composite out, and all of those are installed. A lot of times you'll get these cards from this era and they'll just have the VGA, and they have the headers for the other connectors, but they might be missing a few chips and the headers aren't there. This one has all the headers installed. So you could actually hook this up to a composite monitor if you wanted to and use that as your display. I don't know why you'd want to, but you could. Maybe you can run more than one at a time. Like maybe you can run VGA and either S-Video or composite at the same time and have multiple monitors. And the next card that we saw was this run-of-the-mill 2-port USB card. There's nothing super special about that, really. Here's a closer look at that sound card. It is a Sound Blaster PCI 128. There must have been a gajillion of these things sold. I think I have myself. I have about 20 of them that I found at eWaste over the years. If anybody wants a Sound Blaster card and you want me to put it on my eBay store, just let me know in the comments down below. I know I keep asking you to put stuff in the comments, but you give me good feedback. I think I might do a video where I go through and show how to test these quickly, and then the ones that are definitely working I can put in the eBay store. But yeah, let me know if anybody's interested in buying one of these PCI cards. And last but not least, again, run-of-the-mill modem card. It brings back such fond memories, and it pains me that there's just nothing to do with them. All right, taking a look inside, we have this smallish motherboard, or certainly narrow, definitely not filling up the this full-size PC case here, but it looks like a Pentium 2 system. You can tell because of the fan and the slot processor here. Sorry, these power cords are getting in the way. But yeah, this looks like a Pentium 2 system, which is great. I don't have a ton of experience with Pentium 2s. I never owned one at the time because I was an AMD fanboy back then. So it looks like this should be pretty interesting. It's got 4 DIMM slots here for the memory. Be like, what, PC 133 or something like that, I think it was. There's only 2 of them in here, and there's 4 slots, so maybe one of them was bad at some point. I think I'm going to have to move these over. I'll see if I can look up the motherboard, but I think I'm going to have to move these 2 memory modules that I have over so that it's 1 and 2, because I don't think it'll work if you skip that first one, at least I'm assuming. And in terms of slots, we have an AGP down here in the shadows, which is nice. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 PCI slots and 1 ISA slot. I love these motherboards because they usually come with a very powerful processor, but they still have expandability for some of those boards that only come in ISA. So yeah, I really like seeing this, and it looks super clean too. I'm not even seeing where the battery is. There must be a battery on board somewhere. Duh. It's right here. So that's one thing I'm going to do is go ahead and change that battery out down there first, and then we'll power this on and see if we get any life out of it. And just like we did with the other system, I want to test the power supply to make sure the 5 volt and the 12 volt rail at least are good. And I'll also do some rudimentary checking for shorts, but I don't think a system of this vintage is going to have the same kind of problems with shorts that you would see in older machines. All the caps in here look good. I didn't mention that before, but none of them look like they've leaked or blown. So that's really good news, but you never know. So I'll do a quick check. But anyway, let's just go ahead and turn this thing on and see what kind of power we get. And I've got to turn the switch on the back. Ah! Oh! Yeah, that power supply is not good if you couldn't figure it out. Not good at all. I don't have anything shorted here, so that was just a complete power supply failure. Boy, am I glad I disconnected the power supply from the main board before turning it on. I hope that whatever was going on with this power supply did not affect the main board, you know, that this maybe this happened and the system was dead at that point and they, you know, whatever, brought it into e-waste or something like that. I hope that's not the case. So yeah, I will check for shorts on all the peripherals, which I did not do before, but looks like we're going to need another ATX power supply. Scared me half to death. Magic smoke time. Whew. Okay, my heart is pounding again, which is great. It feels almost normal. I know I used this particular power supply the other day. It even says for Pentium 4 on it, and it's a 300 watt power supply, just like the one I just took out. So this should be good, but again, I'm going to go ahead and maybe stand back this time when I turn this thing on before we do our testing, because I do not know what happened that last time. Okay, I'm turning it on. Let's see what happens. Okay. It didn't blow up. The fan is on, so it's running. And I heard that I've got it plugged into both CD-ROMs here just to draw some load. And I heard them both kind of power on. So let's go back and do our voltage check now that I feel a little bit more safe. What have we got on 5 volts? 5.14, exactly what I thought it was going to be. And we've got 12.1 on the 12 volt rail. So now I feel much more comfortable plugging this into the motherboard, and we'll see. Hopefully the motherboard itself is okay. Like I said, I'll do some short testing down here. By the way, the cables on that original power supply that blew up on me, I tested them for shorts in case any of these devices were shorted, and these devices were not shorted. They were perfectly fine. So whatever the problem was, it wasn't coming from these devices being shorted. So I don't know. Okay, well, I've got the video card back installed and the sound card installed and a fresh CR2032 battery installed in the motherboard. Get the monitor here again. There's enough room to just put this monitor with this small stand right over here on the drive rack here in the back. And then I've got my favorite clicky keyboard hooked up that I built in a previous episode and found a new use for it. I'm working on a project right now, and as soon as I've done testing all the permutations, I will show you how I'm hooking up this wonderful clicky keyboard to the system and to a lot of other systems too. Okay, well, everything is hooked up. Let's turn it on and go for broke. Maybe we'll get some more smoke. Maybe we'll get some more flames. Let's see. Well, doesn't sound like it. We've got fans running. That's good. Here we go. It's a Viper 2. Diamond Viper 2. That's what it is. Looking good. No, it's a Pentium 3 on the riser. Pentium 3. I didn't know they made Pentium 3s on risers. I thought it was just the Pentium 2s. Now you learn something new every day. Like I said, I skipped this whole period and was just running AMD chips. So that's not my specialty, but that's pretty cool. And the plug-and-play BIOS here found the two DVD drives. It says one is a DVD read-write and the other one's DVD-ROM. Wow, looking good. Floppy disk fail. That's interesting. So let's go ahead and go into setup. And here we go. We've got a system date of 2000. So this was somewhat late in the game. This time we can set the year to 2021. Just want to reboot and make sure it is remembering the date. It's holding the date. Hey, it's working. Turns out that the floppy connector, the header down on the motherboard, is pretty far from here. It's like all the way down to here from the top here. And so the cable's pretty long, and so I didn't realize when I was plugging in the other cards, the cable would come out, and of course the floppy drive isn't going to work with the cable out, but now it is working just fine. And so, you know, in order to install a really, you know, high quality game and push this thing to its limits, I would have to install Windows 98 or Windows XP or something like that. I don't want to go through the process of doing all that right now. I just want to test this out and get it going. So let me just hook up the zip drive. We'll get Doom going. I'm not going to go through the install process right now. Looks like after that big power supply explosion, everything seems so far to be working just fine. All right, so just like we did with the other one, I attached the zip drive to one of the IDE controllers there, and sure enough, came back and found the zip drive. So I wonder if there's any more modern benchmarks on here. All right, well, here's SpeedSys. That should be a little better. Probably should have run SpeedSys on the other one, actually. Here we go. Brings it up. Intel Pentium 3, 800 megahertz. Shows 512 megs of RAM. There's our Diamond Viper 2 Savage 2000 card. And yeah, this is clocking in right at just below the Athlon 800. So speed-wise, it looks like it's doing well. And it tested the memory, and I guess that's going to all be okay. It says everything passed, but yeah, there we go. Looks good. And of course, running Doom on this is completely unnecessary, except I do want to test the sound. But am I going to get sound in this in DOS? No, I'm not. If I were to load Windows, then I'm sure we would get sound. I don't even know if you can get that card to run in DOS mode. I'll have to check and see. Yeah, after doing some quick research, it is true that the PCI Sound Blaster PCI 128 card really was only meant to work with Windows, and there aren't any DOS drivers that I know of. I think there is one that works with PCEM, where if you already have Windows installed and you go into DOS mode, or if you run it from a window, you can get sound from those games by running the driver there with PCEM installed, which I've done before. Anyway, I'm not going to do that. This PC is up and running. And by now you're probably wondering how much these systems cost. Well, the older system cost me $30 at eWaste, and the newer one only cost me $10. So that's $40 for two full-size tower PCs. Not bad at all. Really cool system. But I think probably for this one, I'm going to see if I can find someone to pass this system on to, especially someone that wants to play with these removable hard drives. Maybe you can find some caddies on eBay or something like that. And yeah, you could really go to town with a system like this. It's really nice. And unfortunately, I don't have room to keep it because it would be fun to mess around with. But I'm definitely going to mess around with that earlier system that I showed before. So one last time, give me your suggestions in the comments below. And if you like videos like this, you've come to the right place. I will add a video over here in the corner. I hope that's the right direction. I can never get it right. Check out that video, and I'll see you over there in the next one. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
End of line.